Good evening, viewers. This is Matt returning again in the character of Cathra, who we can see sat in the background there, and it's her story of her life. I won't go into too much detail about it, but needless to say that this is a kind of offshoot of her life, her one life. If she dies, I have to start again. But one of the things I'm interested in, she's interested, is reading about the lore and literature of Skyrim and the surrounding continents around that, countries. The reason we're both interested in that is that my character's interested because she suffers from amnesia and knows nothing about this world or land that she lives in, and mine is I've played Skyrim for a few years now and always meaningfully pick up the books and shelve them in a home that I've built with the idea that one day I'll sit down and read them all. And I know this isn't true at all. I'm never going to do this. So I decided that actually if I create a series of videos in which I read the books out aloud, then not only will the lore kind of be subsumed into my psyche, and I might play the game with a little bit more thought into what everyone is saying and wearing and doing and the culture that's coming out through these characters, but also it might really enrich the gaming experience for me, because this time I want to play it more as a storyteller myself, trying to understand the choices Cathra makes rather than simply just hack and slash, or as I play, fire arrows for a very long way away, and enjoy that element, but kind of bring that little richer meaning to it, which has always been my aim in this rerun of playing the game. So without further ado, I thought it'd be really nice to read the very first book that Cathra picked up, which she found when she woke up from into a new life outside in the frost. She found this in a knapsack that is near her. It's A Dance in Fire, the first volume, chapter 1, written by Warren and Yarth. And the mod that's used to make this book look so pretty, and all the books that are in this game, is one called Covers Skyrim, which I will link in the video once I've finished it. I really like the kind of finish that it gives to the gold leaf lettering. The spine looks pretty, but also the thought that's gone into the cover, this idea of this flame coloured finish, which I think is great. So let's start reading this, and I hope it brings you some pleasure and interest too. A Dance in Fire, Chapter 1, by Warren Yarth. Scene: the Imperial City, Cyrodiil. Date 7 Frostfall, 3E 397. I should state at this point that I apologise in advance if I get any words or names wrong. The more I play this game and actually pay attention, the better it will get. Let's go. It seemed as if the palace had always housed the Atreus Building Commission, the company of clerks and estate agents who authored and notarized nearly every construction of any note in the empire. It had stood for 250 years, since the reign of the Emperor Magnus, a plain-fronted and austere hall on a minor but respectable plaza in the Imperial City. Energetic and ambitious middle-class lads and ladies worked there, as well as complacent middle-aged ones like Decimus Scotti. No one could imagine a world without the Commission, least of all Scotti. To be accurate, he could not imagine a world without himself in the Commission. "Lord Atreus is perfectly aware of your contributions," said the managing clerk, closing the shutter that demarcated Scotty's office behind him. "But you know that things have been difficult." "Yes," said Scotty stiffly. "Lord Van Etche's men have been giving us a lot of competition lately, and we must be more efficient if we are to survive. Unfortunately, that means releasing some of our historically best, but presently underachieving senior clerks." "I understand. Can't be helped." "I'm glad that you understand," smiled the managing clerk, smiling thinly and withdrawing. "Please, have your room cleared immediately." Scotty began the task of organising all his work to pass on to his successor. It would probably be young Imbralius who would take most of it on, which was as it should be, he considered philosophically. The lad knew how to find business. Scotty wondered idly what the fellow would do with the contracts for the new statue at St. Alessia, for which the Temple of the One had applied. Probably invent a clerical error, blame it on his old predecessor, Decimus Scotti, and require an additional cost to rectify. I have a correspondence for Dacimus Scotty on the Atrius Building Commission. Scotty looked up. A fat-faced courier had entered his office and was thrusting forth a sealed scroll. He handed the boy a gold piece and opened it up. By the poor penmanship, atrocious spelling and grammar, and overall unprofessional voice tone, it was manifestly evident who the writer was. Leodes Juris, a fellow clerk some years before who had left the commission after being accused of unethical business practices. Dear Scotty, I imagine you always wondered what happened to me, and the last place you would have expected to find me is out in the woods, but that's exactly where I am. If you're smart and you want to make a lot of extra gold for Lord Atrius and yourself, you'll come down to Valenwood too. If you haven't or have been following the politics here lately, you may or may not know that there's been a war between the Boschma and their neighbours elsewhere over the past 2 years. Things have only just calmed down and there's a lot that needs to be rebuilt. Now I've got more business than I can handle, but I need someone with some clout, someone representing a respected agency to get the quill in the ink. That someone is you, my friend. Come and meet me at the Mufur Pascos Tavern in Falinesti, Valenwood. I'll be there 2 weeks, and you won't be sorry. Juris. P.S. Bring a wagon load of timber if you can. What do you have there, Scotty? Asked the voice. Scotty started. It was Imbralius, his damnably handsome face peeking through the shutters, smiling in that way that melted the hearts of the stingiest of patrons and the roughest of stonemasons. Scotty shoved the letter in his jacket pocket. Personal correspondence, he sniffed. I'll be cleared up here in just a moment. I don't want to hurry you, said Imbralius, grabbing a few sheets of blank contracts from Scotty's desk. I've just gone through a stack and the junior scribe's hands are all cramping up, so I thought you wouldn't miss a few. The lad vanished. Scotty retrieved the letter and read it again. He thought about his life, something he really did. It seemed a sea of grey with a black, insurmountable wall looming. There was only one narrow passage he could see in that wall. Quickly, before he had a moment to reconsider it, he grabbed a dozen of the blank contracts with the shimmering gold leaf, Atrius Building Commission by appointment of His Imperial Majesty, and hid them in a satchel with his personal effects. The next day he began his adventure with a giddy lack of hesitation. He arranged for a seat in a caravan bound for Valenwood, the single escorted conveyance to the southeast leaving the Imperial City that week. He had scarcely hours to pack, but he remembered to purchase a wagon load of timber. It will be extra gold to pay for a horse to pull that, frowned the convoy head. So I anticipated, smiled Scotty with his best Imbralius grin. 10 wagons in all set off that afternoon through the familiar Cyrodiilic countryside, past fields of wildflowers, gently rolling woodlands, friendly hamlets. The clop of the horses' hooves against the sound stone road reminded Scotty that the Atrius Building Commission constructed it. 5 of the 18 necessary contracts for its completion were drafted by his own hand. Very smart of you to bring that wood along, said a grey-whiskered Breton man next to him on his wagon. You must be in commerce. Of a sort, said Scotty in a way he hoped was mysterious before introducing himself. Decimus Scotty. Griff Malon, said the man. I'm a poet. Actually a translator of old Bosmer literature. I was researching some newly discovered tracks on the Mnoriad play bar 2 years ago when the war broke out and I had to leave. You're no doubt familiar with the Mnoriad if you're aware of the Green Pact. Scotty thought the man might be speaking perfect gibberish, but he nodded his head. Actually, I don't pretend that Mnoriad is as renowned as the Mea Ledion, or as ancient as the Danzig Gaul, but I think it has a remarkable significance to understanding the nature of the Mesolithic Bosmer mind. The origin of the wood elf aversion to cutting their own wood or eating any plant material at all, yet paradoxically their willingness to import plant stuff from other cultures, I feel can be linked to a passage in the Mnoriad. Malon shuffled through some of his papers, searching for the appropriate text. And to Scotty's vast relief, the carriage soon stopped to camp for the night. They were high on a bluff over a grey stream, and before them was the great valley of Valenwood. Only the cry of seabirds declared the presence of the ocean to the bay to the west. Here the timber was so tall and wide, twisting itself around like an impossible knot begun eons ago to be impenetrable. A few more modest trees, only 50 feet to lowest branches, stood on a cliff at the edge of the camp. The sight was so alien to Scotty, and he found himself so anxious about the proposition of entering the wilderness, that he could not imagine sleeping. Fortunately, Malon had supposed he had found another academic with a passion for the riddles of ancient cultures. Long into the night he recited Bosma verse in original and in his own translation, sobbing and bellowing and whispering wherever appropriate. Gradually Scotty began to feel drowsy, but a sudden crack of wood snapping made him sit up straight. "What was that?" Malon smiled. "I'd like it too. Convocation in the malignity of the moonless speculum. A dance of fire." "But there are some enormous birds up in the trees moving around," whispered Scotty, pointing in the direction of the dark shapes above. "I wouldn't worry about that," said Malon, irritated with his audience. "Now, listen to how the poet characterizes Hermamora's invocation in the 18th stanza of the 4th book. The dark shapes in the trees were some of them perched like birds, others slithered like snakes, and still others stood up straight like men." As Malon recited his verse, Scotty watched the figures softly leap from branch to branch, half gliding across impossible distances for anything without wings. They gathered in groups and then reorganized until they had spread to every tree around the camp. Suddenly they plummeted from the heights. "Mara!" cried Scotty. "They're falling like rain." "Probably seed pods," Malon shrugged, not turning around. "Some of the trees are remarkable." The camp erupted into chaos. Fires burst out in the wagons, the horses wailed from mortal blows, casks of wine, fresh water, and liquor gushed their contents to the ground. A nimble shadow dashed past Scotty and Malon, gathering sacks of grain and gold with impossible agility and grace. Scotty had only one glance at it, lit up by a sudden nearby burst of flame. It was a sleek creature with pointed ears, wide yellow eyes, mottled pied fur, and a tail like a whip. "Werewolf!" he whimpered, shrinking back. "Cathy, right," groaned Malon. "Much worse. Khajiit cousins or some such thing come to plunder." "Are you sure?" As quickly as they struck, the creatures retreated, diving off the bluff before the battle mage and knight, the caravan's escorts, had fully opened their eyes. Malon and Scotty ran to the precipice and saw 100 feet below the tiny figures dash out of the water, shake themselves and disappear into the wood. "Werewolves on acrobats like that," said Malon. "They were definitely Cathy Rach. Bastard thieves. Thanks Stendhal I didn't recognise the value of my notebooks. It wasn't a complete loss." That's the end of A Dance of Fire, the first volume. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I certainly know that my character is going to be looking forward to reading more of these books. It's interesting because when she woke up at the beginning of the game, she found the unconscious form of a Khajiit near her too. So she's reading this and thinking with some trepidation whether it's true or not, or whether this is based in a distant past, because her knowledge of Khajiit must be quite a positive one if she's travelled with one. Anyway, I'm out. Thanks very much for listening.